First things first, every single person in this room is a already good public speaker, or can and will be. Does anybody disagree with that? Does anybody think that it's an innate quality to be a good public speaker? Okay, good, because then that asks William Jennings Bryan was a politician, late 19th century. He was never elected president, but he was a candidate for the Democratic Party several times as Secretary of State, and he said that the ability to speak effectively is an acquirement, and he's right. I know he's right because I was not a very good public speaker, and I'm not saying that I'm amazing right now. I'm just I accepted to give this workshop because I feel that I've learned to do it relatively well, and I definitely coached myself to do it, and that's what all of you are capable of doing. There are a lot of cultural aspects, and there's a lot of cultural diversity to public speaking. And what I mean by that is that there are different ways that audiences react to public speaking. There are different ways of learning it. There are different ways of speaking, and that has a lot to do with what country you're in, what community you're in. And I am very respectful and open to to that diversity. So at any time during this workshop, also, because you guys are from all over the world, if you think that a pointer or a technique or a way of expressing something is somewhat contradicting and contrary to what a good reaction would be in in a community that you're well aware of, you should say it. Because I'm French American, and I cannot disconnect myself from the bicultural, bilingual education that I had, and that has a lot to do with how I express myself. I probably express myself a little bit more in an American way than a French way, to be completely honest with you. And that has a lot, so you should not feel that there is one way. There's definitely not an American way to express yourself. There is a French way, or there are ways, but they're not necessarily the most effective or the best. That is completely up to the situation, up to you, and you yourself are your best coach for public speaking, and you know your surroundings. And knowing your audience is very important. The number of times where I said jokes that completely failed outnumbers very sadly the number of times that they were told. This being one more time. All right, I want everybody to stand up for a second. Even though you guys put your notepads down, which I'm very impressed with because you guys are taking notes, that's good. Okay, this is a simple breathing exercise. Does anybody know what diaphragmatic breathing is? Does someone want to explain diaphragmatic breathing? Breathing? It's not breathing, that'd be weird. Diaphragmatic breathing? No volunteer? There are going to be plenty of volunteers later. Okay. Your diaphragm is the muscle that separates your torso and the abdomen. When you are breathing deeply and getting air correctly into your lungs and blowing up your lungs like a balloon, you are lightly pressing down the diaphragm muscle like you are pushing down on a paper plate towards the table. It means it kind of spreads out. And if you put your hands on your sides right below your ribs right now, and we're going to take several deep breaths together, and I want you to feel like you're getting the air into your lungs. And when you were a baby, believe it or not, you were breathing diaphragmatic breathing. And when you were lying down, and I encourage you all to do this time, when you are lying down, you can all do this by taking several deep breaths. And it is important for relaxation, for giving you or enter your voice, and that is essential in good public speaking. So together we're going to do several deep breaths. Through the nose. Hold it. Your shoulders, not squinch up. That is what we do when it is not diaphragmatic breathing. The reason for that is when you're lying down, you have room for your lungs to blow up like a balloon without the rib cage and the sternum getting in the way. Whereas when you're standing up, you have a tendency to lift your shoulders and get stressed out and stress out your shoulders. Here, stay relaxed and just blow up your lungs. Actually, that's a weird way of saying blow up your lungs. All right, everybody back down. Simple exercise. Take time in the morning to deep breathe. Take time at night before you go to sleep to deep breathe. Okay. Now, in the next 4 seconds, I want somebody to stand up and introduce him or herself. Say where they're from, one thing they like about New York, and just anything else that they want to share with them. And if in 3 seconds someone has not stood up to introduce themselves, I will call on somebody. Thank you, okay.
My name is Agadi, and you can call me Agadi because it's very difficult to pronounce. I think about that. I'm coming from Paris, and I'm a member of the climate organization team. My job is to promote the research projects that you will see tonight at the poster session. So I hope you enjoy that. That's it.
Very good.
I think I love Central Park.
Next, can you hear that?
Yeah?
Yeah, good. Okay, could you stand up one more time, put this in your mouth, and say the exact same thing, please? Or a different version if you want. I want you to articulate as much as you can. That was very good. Don't worry, anybody would have done this test.
I think that I'm not going to say exactly the same thing that we thought, but it was quite long, and with this friend in my mouth, kind of difficult. But anyway, I'm coming from Paris. My name is Agadi. You can call me Agadi. And, well, I'm a research project officer of climate. And lastly, I like for project of in New York. And I think I did. My name is Agadi. I'm coming from Paris. I think you know that. So you can call me Agadi to be more practical for you. I'm the research promotion officer, which is quite complex, but that's nice. And lastly, what I like about New York is Central Park. I hope you will all enjoy that this week.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Yeah. Believe it or not, the third time was slightly clearer, slightly slower, slightly more force than the first time, and obviously the second time. Although you probably put in more force in the second time. But this is a little thing that actors do, that a lot of people do when they're just trying to warm up their speech, and it is kind of fun. Also, if you want to do it with friends, it's kind of fun to also watch. Another volunteer, next 3 seconds. Yes, thank you. What is your name? Sorry, I can't read your
My name is Aisha Muhammad. I'm from Dallas, Texas, by way of Oklahoma. I'm a career development officer. I'm an ex-meteorologist, and I would really like to be a ballerina. I don't want to be I like about New York. I like the multiculturalism of New York because I'm from the Bible Belt, and you don't see any culture or any diversity there whatsoever.
Thank you very much, Aisha. All right, now stand up, please. Stand up. One more exercise that you guys should learn. This is going to be a strange request, but I know you can do it. I want you to introduce yourself again. You don't have to do verbatim the same thing, but I want you to try and hit the highest pitch that you can. Now, this is also going to be somewhat comical, but since you're being a volunteer, we're all going to support her in this. You're going to say it, same speech, the highest pitch that you can. Are you uncomfortable with this? No, good. So, I'll tell you what. After you do it, I will do the next minute of my public speaking animation, the highest pitch that I can, which won't be very high.
My name is Aisha Muhammad, and I'm originally from Dallas, Texas, by way of Oklahoma, and I am a career development officer / ex-meteorologist. I would really like to be a ballerina at some point in my life, and I like the multiculturalism of New York City.
Hi, very good. Very good. All right, now you may think that beyond just wanting to guys through some kind of torture that there is a reason for doing that. I'm not going to say a third time regular voice. But believe it or not, hitting a high pitch sometimes for several sentences or warming up your voice that way is a good way to get your voice going and to hit the range of pitches that you have. Okay. One One more volunteer. What about a male volunteer? No, just introduce yourself. Okay, I'm going to be right next to you, so you can share it. Okay, go ahead.
So my name is Antoine Laine. I'm Communication and Partnership Officer at Climax. I'm French. I live here. And the reason why I love New York is, I guess, like the global atmosphere, architecture of the city, which is very different from what I know in France. So yeah, I just like to be here a couple of days and take advantage of this wonderful event that I'm sharing with you guys.
Very good. Stay there. Now I want you to imagine that every single person in this room owes you $200. I want you to give the same speech. They owe you money, and they haven't given it to you.
Hi, my name is Antoine Laine. I'm the Communication and Partnership Officer, or Director, rather Director.
I'm fine. Everyone's owing you money.
Okay, well, you might owe me $200. Why I love New York is the global architecture of that city. And you bet you're gonna like that too if you owe me $200. I like the atmosphere. I come from Paris, and I'm having a great time with you, and I really hope that by the end of the week you're gonna give me my money back.
Alright, as comical as it is, you can do that with yourself when you are trying to distract yourself from what are all the other distractions, meaning when you're trying to have self-confidence in your public speaking. I say trying for several reasons. One is self-confidence is something that you build over time. It takes practice. It is not something that is just there. It is something that comes from practice. If you do not speak in public, you will not improve speaking in public. Okay? There's no such thing as improvement without practicing. And this little technique, I could have also told him, imagine that everybody's naked, but
You're right, yes.
All right. For the non-PG-13 jokes, Aggie is here. But you notice, obviously, the force that he had in the second speech. Yes, it was comical, but honestly, I told him, yeah, do it, he said, be serious about it, there still would have been more force. And we're all trying to work on how much force you have in your voice, not in an aggressive way. It wasn't that aggressive, except when he said that he actually needed to get your money back. I was very subtle that way. But that force is what you're looking for. That doesn't necessarily mean you don't have a soft touch. You don't have the ability to transmit very subtle emotions. And there's another thing that's important in public speaking, is completely connecting with your audience. I consider every time I speak in public an interaction. And if I haven't interacted at the end of the speech, then I feel like I didn't connect. And that's what it is. It's an interaction. And I feel the energy from the audience. The last exercise we're going to do is all together. And those of you that participated in the first Climate Summit know that I love this exercise. It's silly, but it brings you back to your animal instincts. We don't have to stand up, but we are going to go into a kind of a song where each person repeats a sound over and over again, and every single person adds on to it with their own sounds. Who wants to start? And was it clear? I'll tell you what, we'll start with someone who knows the exercise just in case it wasn't clear. Like Norma, who knows the exercise really easy. You did it, and nothing else you want to know. She was paying attention. Oh, you were good. Okay, well, that's a good excuse. But it's not an excuse, it's a good explanation. Okay. I know Santiago knows the exercise. Yes, you will. The rules of the game is you choose a sound that you repeat over and over again, and everybody adds to it, and by the end of, you want to start off? Okay.
Choo choo! Choo choo! Choo choo! Choo choo!
Everybody's going to make a sound. get about 4 or 5 experts from research institutions doing that, and one of the experts was the first person to start. It was actually pretty funny. I saw the footage of that. Because basically a really good expert who'd never seen not uptight, but definitely, not in the setting where you're just joking around with them, just starts going, ow, ow, ow. It was most especially men, anyways. All right. The reason we're going to do this workshop is, obviously we're not going to be able to get in from A to Z how to become a great public speaker. What we're going to do is we're going to try and work together to give each other pointers, give each other some examples of exercises, and give some feedback, and just try and establish some basic principles, of which the first is you are your best coach. Secondly, who else is your best coach for public speaking?
Your mirror.
Your mirror. Your mirror's not bad. That's good. Yeah. What else?
Your pen.
The pen. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Absolutely. Your voice. Yeah. Absolutely. But then I'm talking about in terms of giving you feedback. Your friends. Yes. For most of the people in the room are climates. Some of you are not yet climates. Might become climates. Honestly, we're here to support each other. You should not feel too self-conscious to receive feedback or to ask for it after you give a speech or any kind of public speaking intervention. The best, we're going to do a debrief at the end of this workshop, because debriefing is essential to improving and to going over what you learned. And it is this, you can never be too curious as to what people thought of your public speech. And that doesn't mean everything they say is right. That doesn't mean that everything that you get is going to be helpful, but there is always something to take away from it. Dale Carnegie was one of the most renowned figures in terms of public speaking, in terms of consulting with people, and he was a consultant for people that wanted to improve their public speaking. He wrote a book that I recommend to you if you're very serious about public speaking. It's kind of long, but Public Speaking with Success. A lot of exercise in it, and he has 4 basic principles that I completely agree with. That to improve public speaking, you have one desire, you have to want to do it, just like any other endeavor. It's a project that you set with yourself, and you practice it daily or weekly without becoming obsessed with it, obviously. Preparation, always know what you're going to talk about. If you don't prepare, the audience at some point will pick it up. And not really understanding what you were talking about is going to affect your whole speech, it's going to affect your confidence, the delivery, everything. Practice, always, like I said, I can't emphasize that enough, to not be afraid and take the opportunity when you are in a room, when there are other people in the room, when there's a conference, to stand up and just ask a question or express your opinion. And the last principle that I have forgotten, I wrote it here on my iPad. Never forget your iPad as your notes, by the way. Act confidence. Okay. How many of you sometimes feel that you need to have the feeling there to then portray, demonstrate, reveal self-confidence? Okay, nobody. That's good. Oh, you, Aisha. Okay. Well, some anthropologists, sociologists, and public speaking consultants believe, and I tend to agree with this, that action and confidence kind of go together, and not necessarily in a particular order. That is, you can act self-confident, and the more you act self-confident, even if you're not feeling it, but you act self-confident and others around you see that you, or perceive that you're self-confident, sometimes your feelings can then follow. That is, it is very difficult to control your feeling. Who is a competitive athlete or a musician person? Several of you. Do you sometimes feel that you're there trying to get the feeling, you had a great feeling, and 2 days later you lost it, and you're wondering where it went, and how do I get it back? Does it usually come when you're trying to force the issue and get the feeling back? At least for me it does. I played tennis when I was acting self-confident because I knew that I had the best chance of winning that day, even if I didn't have the feeling, because I knew the adversary didn't know whether I was confident or not. So might as well act it. Okay? Alright, we're going to go through some exercises now. The first being the intensive speaker exercise, which I call it. Don't worry, these are titles that I made up. It's very simple. Yeah. Am I talking loud?
Now we're going to
say 5 minutes for meeting.
Oh.
So maybe not do
40
This can take 3 minutes. Okay. You're going to pick a partner. We're going to go simple. The person next to you. make sure you don't turn to the same person. You're going to start telling a story. You're going to listen to her or his story at the same time. And at the end, I'm going to say stop. And you're going to explain the story that you tried to listen to back to your partner. Now, here's the deal. We're in a dense space here. You guys are all crunched together. We don't have time. You're going to leave soon, so we're not going to practice our outside voices right now. We're going to speak clearly, articulate, and try and speak, with force, without speaking so that the people behind you cannot understand what they're thinking of you. I'm asking you to do two things at once over. Okay? I'd rather you stand up for this exercise. I know Valley really enjoyed you guys because as a community manager, it's going to think my community is going to blow up the windows how loud it is in here. Okay. How did it go? That's what's close at. Does anybody want to say what percentage of the story did you get? 7. 7. 7. 5. Okay. Pause. Everybody pause. All right, take a few deep breaths, okay? Think about the exercise. Slow down your speech. Look at the facial features of the person across from you, okay? Slow down and do it again. One more time for 30 seconds. New story. New story. Now you guys already said the story back to your partner? No? Okay, do it a little bit. Go ahead, try. No, right? Okay. Right, really quickly before some of you go off to rock away. Did anybody feel that they improved between the first and the second time? Yeah? Don't say that doesn't make me feel good. Go ahead. Okay. Does anybody want to share why? Notice some of the things they did a little bit better? Yes. Noel.
It's because your brain has to take time to process what you are saying first before you hear what they're saying. And you're trying to understand what you're saying, and they're talking to you.
Yeah.
So it's like, am I listening? Am I listening to myself? Am I listening to you? So I'm not you there.
Right. Are you saying that the self-awareness is an obstacle?
Oh yeah.
Okay. So we're talking about hardcore concentration, right? How many of you remember the names of people when they introduce you to a group of people? Usually, I'm not very good at it. You know, we only use about 10% of our memory's capacity on a daily basis. It's a question of concentration. There are techniques where people sometimes read aloud what they want to remember. That's what Abraham Lincoln did. There are techniques where you put an image to every single thing that you learn, or at least what you want to remember. Okay? Concentration is an enormous issue, and you would do this exercise, you realize that you're able to listen and speak at the same time. Anybody else want to share something about this? Yes, you're getting.
More words.
Okay, good.
Very like simple sentences, like we like remember all story, like very like simple.
Absolutely.
Like I like to read like keyword like time, places, people, like very simple way.
In a speech, and I'll get to you in a second, Santiago, before that Leslie, she had her hand up. In a speech, emphasize the important words and subordinate the less important words. Does everybody, that sound clear? I'm not saying don't articulate them. But if you emphasize every single word, that's not going to get anybody interested. It's only going to annoy people. Santiago.
No, I would perceive that if the other person says things that you know that your brain gets like faster.
Okay.
Yeah, so if the other person is telling you a story and he used words or he mentioned places, he did things that you have done or places that you have visited or people that you know, your brain does it's easy to you remember from the story because your brain has capacity to alliate with the other story.
So you're tapping into the understanding as a key factor of delivering and listening to a great speech.
Yeah.
Right. That goes into the preparation, how well you know the material as well.
So,
Absolutely.
so my idea is that when you want to give a speech, you need, and besides knowing your audience, you might think in things that they can feel familiar with, so they can remember your speech and they can get familiar, and at the end, they can get close to your speech because you are talking the same level.
Most good speakers feel that when they're finished with the speech, they have not delivered even close to all the information that they want to get out because they've, to a certain extent, over-prepared. Not over-prepared to its stress and to an obsession, but because there's so much knowledge that they want to share and could, right? That if you do get into an interaction where you're exchanging information like this, you understand quickly what you've prepared for already, and you're able to digest it intellectually. Yeah, Leslie, right? You had your hand up, and then we'll stop because some of you have to go.
Just wanted to say that when you talk speech anyway, people will focus on what you are, what you look like, and your voice. And that's also not working on your concentration of memory, it's concentration on who you are. And after the speech may come, so it's pretty useful when you want to make sure people remember words. To have, you know, the image and the sound that go good words. And also, maybe I'm really stupid, but I didn't
No.
of the exercise you just did. I don't know. Why did you use this exercise talking to each other at the same time?
I wanted you guys to see that you can deliver a speech and not be rattled by another speech being given to you at the same time, that you can concentrate on several things somewhat at the same time, not what I would say. But you have much more capacity of concentration that you tap into on a daily basis. And we're very often distracted by a lot of things. I don't want to go too much further because some of you have to leave now, and we're going to go on to the next exercise. So whoever needs to go can go.
Okay, and just one
Best of you stay here.
one thing just for me, on a table over there is some printouts. Take the printout with your name on it.
And again, those who are staying for BQ and for the UN, stay here. The training with Henry continues. The other ones, we will see you tonight at Columbia. Nader will guide you to Columbia. So whoever is staying, please move forward.
Ça se passe bien, ouais, en termes de son, j'ai pas le retour du son. Donc pour les gens qui sont en train d'écouter dans le câble, parce que là, je suis sorti sur je peux pas savoir, mais je pense qu'il y a un peu, ça devrait aller à peu près. Par contre, les personnes, quand on parlait là, c'est un peu compliqué. Donc c'est là, t'as toi qui porte. Non, c'est pas mal. Voilà. Non? André?
While we're leaving, could I ask you all to take a large corridor between the chairs here?
Allez, go, 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 go!
Okay, so there are much fewer of you. I don't know. I'm assuming those of, I don't know. That's beyond my department. This workshop works better when there are less people anyway. And the best if you stay. Can't go anywhere that's going to work in that. Okay. The next exercise we're going to do I call the unrattled speaker. A lot like the attentive speaker, we're going to test our ability to concentrate and have different potential distractions intervene while speaking. And you're going to see that because there isn't a large, maybe we'll be able to do it more than once. Okay? But you see that you are able to improve in how well you're concentrating in your speech. And once again, the overarching goal for this is so that you feel you're able, willing, and eager to interact with the people around you when you speak. Okay? Just a little side note. If I tell you, and you're going to do public speaking, I say just speak to the audience as if you're speaking just in a conversation to John Smith. I'm picking the most common name on purpose, right? Okay. A group of people is just a bunch of John Smiths. It's not because they're more than that any of that one individual people changed. I'm not sure that was grammatically correct. That's not impressive profile. But anyway, sitting down sometimes is a much easier way of speaking. As soon as you stand up, it changes everything. Well, you're perfectly capable of speaking when you're standing up. It's the same way you're speaking down, but sitting down. All right. We'll come back to the general pointers that are boring. It's not where you're going to do an exercise now. Well, the unrattled speaker, we're going to get in a line starting behind Jack. Jack? Yeah. Even though it says John and Jack. Yeah. No, I couldn't see that. I hadn't heard that. Behind Jack, we're going to form a single file line. Not just one demonstration first, because otherwise it'll be too far away. Okay? So I need 3 volunteers to come up here, and 1 volunteer to, right now 4 of you come up here. Okay, Tatiana, Noella, Jack, and Adrian. We're going to interview against being a volunteer. Good. All right, on this iPad is a speech by Barack Obama on climate change.
Yeah.
You know, she wrote a post that expressed the good parts of the Obama speech on climate change, and I did the opposite. We can have a debate because we have a debate. We talked about before, by the way, I'm going to criticize the speech. So I did French girl over here, then an American guy. It's fun. Here is the speech. Who wants to be the speaker? All right, Jack, you look like a presidential figure. Okay. You can go stand right behind the chair that you were at. Adrian, you can go stand right next to, what's your name, sorry? Seth, yeah. Okay. Now, we're going to facing the wall. Okay, but however you're going to, Jack's going to need to walk by you, so you need to, no, the other way. Right, okay. Sorry, you're going to get really close to Seth. The proximity should, we're all fine here. Okay. You're going to go right next to, and here. Yeah. Right for Danielle, okay. Actually, that's now, let's come forward and go right next to T. Okay. You are going to stand right here with this pen. Okay. To do the what? Oh, no microphone. No microphone. Okay. Now, everybody's going to do this exercise, okay? So no one should feel like there's one's doing better and blah, blah. Everyone's going to do it. You can back up a little bit, Jack, so you get some number and go into it. Now, you are going to read that speech, and you're going to put as much energy and reality, sincerity, honesty into it as if you were President Obama in front of the Georgetown crowd, telling them that your climate change plan was the best since white bread, sliced bread. Yeah, sliced bread. Remember how I said that a lot of times? Adrian, you are going, as he's speaking and walking, you're going to just poke Jack on a certain part of his body. You're not going to tell him which one yet, and you're going to be decent when you do it. Jack, you don't stop or stop speaking. You keep going. So just in fact, well, you're back up a little bit. Okay. Yeah, a little bit more. Tatiana, you're going to whisper in Jack's ear when he goes by you a digit number from 0 to 9. Inclusive, just one. And don't count 372. Because I hate that number. No, it's complicated. And then once you get to this, Jack, carpet, you're going to catch the pen that Noella will throw to you and throw it back to her before you get off the carpet. All right. That gives you more time. Thank you. Okay. If you don't catch the pen, you pick up the pen and you keep going. Don't worry about it, but it's not a race. Okay. So I'm not going to do this, but as soon as you throw the pen back to her, you are done. Wherever you are in the speech. Okay? Is everybody ready to, without cheering him on, volume, support Jack and help him out through this difficult exercise and thank everybody? All right. Jack, the floor is yours. You can start a thank you, or you can start a sentence down. So that's more realistic. Wherever you want, we are Georgetown students. Go ahead. Thank you. Applause.
Thank you so much. Everyone, please be seated. After my first announcement today is that you should.
Very good. Jack did a really good job, and I didn't even give you all the information, which I could have said you're supposed to try and remember what he does and what she tells you. So I didn't tell you that. I just knew what you probably assumed that. Yeah. Okay. Do you want to do one more time?
No.
do you know what he touched?
Actually, I don't.
Okay, was that what you said? All right, good. And you dropped the pen, but that actually forgot to catch the pen. So it's very good. One more time, and then we're all going to do it. Now, Jack, slow down a little bit. There's no rush. Okay. Look up. You can use some gestures, because gestures always enhance speech unless you are distracting. So what would be an example? Does whoever give an example of a gesture that distracts as opposed to a gesture that enhances speech? Look up. Yeah. Okay, let's go. Let's say the roommate took one you're saying you're focused on the person in front of you, on the form, on things that, but how about this one? If I'm giving a speech and I'm talking to you and I keep doing this and then I keep doing this and I just keep opening and closing my vest for absolutely, is this enhancing the speech? Does this make the word Adrian more forceful when I go like this? No, okay. Playing with clothing is definitely something that you can do, and then if you take it out, you will enhance, or you will reduce the distractions that the audience has when watching you speak, okay? All right, I just did a little bit of parentheses there. I'm sorry, Jack, but I give you more time to think about it. You're doing great. One more time, slow down. You are on the podium, and you can look up, you can pause, you don't have to read the word applause. Okay? Go ahead. Remember, you have a pen that will come hit you in the chest if you don't look up at some point.
My first announcement today is that you should all take off your jackets. I'm going to do the same. It's not that sexy now.
Very good. Very good. All right. That was 80% better than the second time. It would have been 100 if you didn't throw them right back.
Okay.
There's no, you were not at the end of the carpet, and you determine your rhythm. No one else is determining your rhythm. You're the one. You determine it. Right? I'm not yelling at you. All right. I'm not going to ask you to do a single file line all the way back, so just in a kind of a rhythmic way, about fluid motion, that's all. You don't get in line and do the same exercise. But I don't want to see people doing this whole time. So I would stay for 2 more people, and then we'll switch it up, okay? Sorry, you need to add that. Here's the speech. You start the speech wherever you want, and no microphone. Okay? You guys are doing great because it's not, you don't have enough space here. I didn't want to rearrange the whole room, etc. But there is enough space, and you are very agile people. You can definitely do it with this much margin, which is not that much. Okay? And that little space. Sorry, Jack, I didn't ask you. Did you know where Adrian tapped in the second time?
Wrist and 2.
Wrist and 2. Look at that. It's concentration improved. Okay? That's not a coincidence. That's because you took your time, you were more aware of your surroundings, and believe it or not, the delivery was much more forceful the second time. Did you feel that? Yes. I say that just to me.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm a very simple person.
You pay for that.
All right. All right, let's go. I'm going to give feedback throughout this. I don't want anybody to feel like at any time that I'm giving feedback and it's personal. Okay? Does that make sense? I mean, it's individual feedback, but it's not personal. You guys can give me feedback and you can, just completely rip on it. I don't care. We're all here to improve, and we're all here to give each other feedback and be our best allies and best friends and best mates. You're up. What's your name? Ollie. Go ahead.
Thank you, Georgetown. Thank you so much. Everybody, please be seated. My first announcement today is that you should all take off your jackets. I'm going to do the same. It's not that sexy. No. Oh, crap.
That was pretty good. Anybody have any comments? Where did they tap you and what did she say?
He tapped me on the chest. I think he's on the floor.
All right, good. That's good concentration. There was a pretty good rhythm of the speech. Forgot to throw the pen back, but that's, that was just one out of the many, many instructions that I gave you that you forgot to do. Very good. Would you mind taking Noella's place? So Noella can take a break from throwing pen at people. All right. There's another joke. Let's go.
It is good to be back in the office, and it is a great privilege to speak from the stage of this history hall that will come President being back. George Washington. I want to thank you, President.
Good. Very good.
That here, number 10.
Sorry, what? Yeah, absolutely. Not only did you poke him in the ear, you attacked him. All right, what did you think? If you had to do it over again, what would you do? What did you guys think of the speech and delivery?
Good case being louder.
Okay, could have been a little bit louder, a little more force. Okay, what else? You want to do it one more time with force? A little more? Yeah, I think you can.
Can I go to double digits or you stay?
Why don't you say single digits? Beautiful. Emphasize important words.
thank you, President. President Dave used it today. I want to thank him for hosting us. I want to thank the many members
That's okay. You're supposed to do that.
of my cabinet and my administration.
Very good.
So it's shoulder and yeah.
All right. You'll notice that so far you guys are doing really well at remembering, concentrating on the distractions right here. A little bit more difficult here, right? Because you're forced to look up. Okay. What does that mean? I haven't said to a single person that you can come here, literally stop, look at Ali, and just wait for him to throw. I haven't said that. But you're all feeling constrained by the speech reading. It's like the speech is owning you to a certain extent, even though you guys are doing a good job. So, remember, you own the speech. I'm definitely going to fall by the end of the workshop. You own the speech, it's your rhythm. Good job, you. Would you mind replacing Tatiana? And Jack, no, Jack, you already volunteered, you can relax. Someone want to, Adrian, say it one more time to replace the next person. But you did, yeah, okay. I just want to make sure you go. How many different notes? All right.
I want to thank you, President Degonka, who is here today. I want to thank him for hosting us. I want to thank the many members of my cabinet and my administration.
Very good.
It wasn't here.
Okay, so you did not hear.
No, I didn't.
Okay. Okay, it's also being said loud enough. Okay. What did everybody think about Young's delivery? Yeah, a little low. Okay. But I thought it was had some good personality to it, right? And I thought you were using gestures, but it could be a little louder. Okay. I'm sorry, we're not going to be able to do everybody twice because I really want to get into the debate exercise. But just listen to the feedback that your students get, that your mates give you. Okay. Yeah, would you mind replacing Juliet? Juliet can go on too. Personality and charisma are key to a speech. Okay. And so gesture and feeling like you're having a conversation with the people that are listening to you are keys. Go ahead. I'll use that.
Thank you, Georgetown. Good to be back on campus. President Ginger, who is here today, because I want to thank him for hosting us. I want to thank the many members of my cabinet and my administration. I want to thank Nida and the members of Congress who are here.
Very
Sorry,
good.
I couldn't translate.
That's okay. What do you feel? President DeJoy. You couldn't think that fast.
I couldn't think that fast.
But do I have a timer?
No, you don't, but I was giving a speech. And I would know the name if I was giving a speech.
Yes, that's true. That's true. But you were not rushed. No one's rushed. In fact, isn't Obama a really slow speaker?
Oh, yeah, he did.
Yeah. Okay. You take it with a grain of salt, but you can't slow down and just be there and be like, DeJoy, and own the fact that you're learning the name as you say it. There's no problem with that. Okay? Where exactly the number? Do you remember?
2, and I don't remember anymore.
I'm sorry, I shouldn't have spoken.
Yeah.
That was my fault. Yeah, with all the thank you. All right, so you bring this back to the end of this. Go ahead, Julian.
On Christmas Eve, 1968, the astronaut Apollo 8, the live broadcast from lunar orbit. So Frank Borman, Jim Lovell, William Andrews, the first human to orbit the moon, describe what they saw, and they read scripture of the book of Genesis.
That's pretty high level, yeah. That's pretty good. A few things they did really well. You dropped the pen, but you didn't speak as you went to pick it up. Meaning that if there was some kind of physical slip up in a speech, that's all right, just own it, and then continue afterwards. Has anybody ever seen someone fall, like walking up the stairs and do a speech? I've seen, okay, he's a tennis player, but I saw him go up to give a speech and he just fell. Got up to the podium and literally went like this. Yeah, there is no way to recover in a cool way from that. He completely owned it. He didn't try and like forget that, make everybody forget. No, you just owned it. Okay? Completely at ease with that, and that's what you did. And you also had a very good enunciation. You were using gestures. You were taking your time. Very good. Do you remember where they talked to him?
No.
Is it because I talked to him? That was right. Someone take Guillaume in Jan's place, please. All right, all you, Mr. Central America.
So, right, gene level really hard first humans to open it, describe what they serve. And they read scripture from the book of Genesis of the remnant parts back here. And later that night, they took a photo that will change the way we see and think about our world. The number 2,
Yeah.
and that was here.
How do you feel?
It's difficult to get the caption.
Yeah.
There's
Usually it's a ball.
Yeah, I mean it's I think that when you try to concentrate on different things, you need to just maybe not fail in one of this, but you just prioritize. You make priorities, and you concentrate on some things, and then you did not prioritize.
Paradoxically, you can do one thing at a time in this exercise. You can throw, speak, catch, and throw again. I never said do it at the same time. I just said the ensemble needs to be at the same time. Because yes, it is difficult to do two things at once. I don't think that it's actually possible, and definitely not for men. Sorry, I know that's sexy. But anyway, you can take your time. That is a game for me, yeah. I'll be the first to say that, and then let's get with multitasking. All right, go ahead, Juliette.
Thank you, Georgetown. Thank you so much, everybody. Please be seated.
Juliette.
And my first announcement today is that you should all take off your jackets. I'm going to do the same.
Sorry, Juliette. Very good, Kelsey. I was trying to tell you to go backwards, and I used the wrong way. It's not that funny. Did you remember what you were expecting? Okay, I think it's because you were going very, very fast, and I was yelling at you. But I think that you should try and do it a little bit slower. She hates you. All right, Kelsey. I'd like you to slow down and enjoy the words that you're saying, even if you don't like the line.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Everybody, please be seated. And my first announcement today is that you should all take off your jackets. And I'm going to do the same.
Very good. You're the first one to catch and throw the pen.
Yeah.
Do you remember where they tapped and what they said?
Here.
Okay. So once again, not anybody except maybe a few people who didn't hear has gotten this part wrong. Meaning, you guys can emphasize the taking of your time and acting into the speech. Because if anything, you guys are erring on the side of paying attention somewhat nervously to what's going to happen here, rather than erring on the side of being too theatrical and too engaged that you wouldn't notice it, right? Even though, in general, it would be the opposite in real life. I'm giving you instructions and a framework for this exercise, okay? And it's actually, you're being very, very good at concentrating. And I want you guys to be a little more engaging in the speech now. Okay, very good. Does anybody want to replace this seat and Tina? Is it Tina? Any feedback right now before we keep going? Any observations? Did I say anything that people would disagree with? Yeah, Margo?
Just saying that we're tweeting to Barack Obama to tell him that we're using his speech for public speaking training.
All right, very nice. Yes, Daniela, right?
It was an image of Earth, beautiful, breathtaking, a glowing marble of blue oceans and green forests and brown mountains touched with white clouds.
Very good. Very good. What do you guys think?
Good. Although she was worried about throwing.
We can always count on Santiago. Yeah, go ahead. What were you saying?
She was worried about throwing back. Yeah. So she stopped the speech from being worried.
It was like a hot potato. You guys know that game? Yeah.
But
No.
also she speak very clear.
She did speak very clear. Yes.
Well, I guess it was one of the first one-liners where she was.
Yeah, of course. Yes.
I've noticed something from sitting right here, and as a matter of fact, from sitting behind Henry. All of you were talking to him. After you finish walking and you reach whoever has thrown the pen at you, you look at Henry for approval. You're not giving the speech only to him, you're giving the speech to the entire room. So there are people behind you, there are people in the front and back. Try to detach yourself from the exercise. You know, this is public speaking, so it should be public, and you should be heard by everybody and not just Henry.
Absolutely. In fact, you guys should not even hear what I think. No, I mean, that's an exaggeration, but it's right on. You guys we're all helping each other out here, too. Yeah, so I don't know if there's me earlier. Nico.
I want to thank you, President Georgia, who's here today. I want to thank him for hosting us. I want to thank the many members of my cabinet and my administration. I want to thank Dear Pelosi and the members of Congress.
Very good. Very, very good. Where do you go? What? That's not Santiago touching with No. I don't know. And the number?
And the number was
Like 6.
Juliet wants to say something.
Are you very calm? You're like losing everything. Never looked up. Like we're all going on.
One time you did look up, and it shows that you have a lot of good hand-eye coordination. You just looked up this way to see the pen and came, you got it, you threw it back, and that was perfect. So that part was perfect, right? You were absolutely not rattled by like some kind of physical prowess or in speech, additional discount, right? But you weren't as aware when you came through here, right? And I think that you could have slowed down a little bit or varied the rhythm of the walking. Because you were very zen and very calm, but you had a kind of a constant walk the whole time, a little bit slower than this. And I think that if you had slowed down, it would have reflected you taking your time and being a little bit more aware of what's here. You know, I'm not saying that you can't look at them, right? You can look at them. Go ahead. No, it's happening. Go ahead. I'll know where it is. On shoulder, whatever. You can look at them. You know, I didn't say didn't. Okay? Good. Very good job. Sorry, we didn't mean. I can't read it. Yeah. Okay. Can you back up just a little bit?
From here. A little more. Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm
Feedback? No. They all laughed.
Yes.
And they're going to remember this one much more than anybody else because they laughed like crazy. You could use that. If you do a little stuff, which is at the end, right? That can help you in speech. There's no bad. There's nothing. You can always move forward to make the speech even better depending on what just happened. Even if what just happened could resemble embarrassment, you're obviously not really used to it. So that's good. They laughed. So it wasn't terrible, like you said. And do you remember? Yeah, but it wasn't. Santiago, where did he?
I feel pleasant. I'm the number.
Where did you tap? I tapped your feet. Okay, so it was in the back. It's general area. You remember the number from my age? Okay. Alright, we don't have time to do it again.
One problem was that I
almost fell.
Yes, and then I was worried about the.
That's okay. When you give a speech, none of these things really happen.
I hope so.
Usually it's not a pen that people throw, it's tomatoes that they don't like. Who hasn't gone yet? Okay. Alright. Do you not want to go? You don't have to. No one has to. Okay, everyone who wants to go should go, and then we stop the exercise. We go into another one this time. Okay. Let's keep going. Tatiana?
I don't think you, boys in the house, for having me back. It was important for me to speak directly to your generation, because the decisions that we make now and in the years ahead will have a profound impact on the world that all of you will inherit. On Christmas Eve, 1968, the astronauts of Apollo 8 did a live rocket. 8? 5. Oh. No, really? No. I swear it was 8. And then you got me.
Yeah,
well, Santiago also had a technique where he seriously waited 5 minutes. I want to demonstrate a lot. Yeah.
I want to try it.
Are you getting bored? Are you trying to make things harder for them?
I mean, because she was like expecting the party.
Everybody is. That's part of the exercise.
I did it on purpose because she just overstepped and she stopped the speech.
Yeah.
So I think that if you're giving the speech, you just need to be confident about giving the speech, and eventually I will pop you.
Really, I didn't find some kind of lingo so that there's no weirdness in the. But anyway. No. I'm really happy you did it because she was probably the perfect candidate. Because you were really taking your time and you did a really good job of delivering the speech. Does anybody else think that? Does anybody else have some feedback? My feedback is very, very positive. You just threw the pen in the middle of the carpet, so that's also because Juliette is right there, so it would have been difficult to throw it right at her. But you took your time. Did everybody see how she looked up several times? Did anybody notice something else? It's difficult because you guys are behind her when she was doing this, but she smiled a lot. Right? Very easy way to turn a speech into, yeah, I kind of remembered it, to, wow, that guy was really doing it, and that guy was charismatic, and that has an enormous impression when you smile and you get out there and you show that you are just taking enormous pleasure in sharing the information. Yeah, I get it.
You read your speech before you read about that. I'm not sure, but I think I before.
Yeah.
I chose it.
Did you memorize it? Is that what you're saying?
No, I didn't memorize it, but I chose the paragraph.
I think that reflects that you were very, very at ease with the language and the term, which you guys can get. I mean, that's more difficult right on the spot. Sometimes good at it, you prepare it, and then there it is. You use that material very well, and you can say it. But I want you to notice that she was really taking stopped here. She looked, I think, at Santiago or Aisha.
I was trying your strategy, but it didn't work because you were so late.
Yeah.
But I thought that.
Yeah. Well, it's time for you to be switched anyway. You guys can sit down and relax. Thank you, guys. Two people to Roberto God to replace Santiago and Aisha. Please, thank you very much. And the next speaker is Adrian.
Go, Adrian. Go, Adrian.
The 12 overviews on recorded history of all buildings that are speaking yours. That's your temperatures, in some areas of the ocean reach record highs, and ice in the Arctic came to the smaller side on record. And ice in the Arctic to faster than most of those are predicted in the world. But I gotta say, I got to say, people are still looking at me for proof of the early Bible. But you went through a passage that had to do with temperatures and record highs, and I don't know what the hell that means. I'm on TV, I don't know what climate change is. You're talking about that stuff. You need to emphasize when you start talking about temperatures and record highs and stuff. You need to be like, record temperatures swept across the globe, and they are record highs. If you do not act now, we are in deep doo-doo. Don't say that, but I mean, you have to emphasize when you use somewhat technical language. I'm glad you used that slide. What else did you? I didn't let you say what you heard or your thoughts. Was here. Okay. Just the head. Yeah. You want to do feedback? Or someone had their hand raised. Yeah. You sorry about that.
When I was doing it, I there's one person in front of me, and when I usually do speeches, I talk to people in front of me. So I feel like that's why some people might be looking up at you as super because you're the only board.
Right, I think.
If we were all standing like if they have blocked, you're the only moving figure.
Well, what I got to say, I kind of agree with that. I was off to the side a couple of times, and afterwards people like turn literally this way to like see what they're doing. But I mean, it's a detail. But you're right. You should be speaking in front of you. You can't be focusing on people behind you. Although, yes, yes. All right. What do you think? Yeah, it is. Hey, I'm going to do it too. You know, I mean, I'm putting you guys through this horrible exercise. So I'm going to do it. And you guys can make fun of me as much as you want right afterwards. Yes, Noella.
I think it would make people worried when if you have to prepare your speech, then you know what to emphasize. That you need to surprise when you're writing it.
You are capable of reading a speech and discovering it at the same time and delivering according to the context. You are absolutely able to do it. Because if remember when you were in like second and third grade, where the teacher calls on you and asks you to read. I mean, how many of you challenged yourselves to read it in a way that really represented what the author was trying to get across? Does anybody remember that? Just primary school asks you to read out loud. That's what we're doing here. It's not very different. Just walking and pens and numbers and typing. Okay, Juliet. Yeah, someone want to take your next place? Thank you. We don't want to go into place. Okay.
To answer in ancient times, but we also know that in the world that farmers and Jews agree. All weather events are affected by warming.
Very good. You know where they put over there? This is a very hard exercise, guys. I mean, you're doing very well on this. All right. Yeah. Well, does anybody want to give feedback on Juliet's proof? Been quiet. Okay. Yes, I think you could have slowed down and put a little bit more force into some of the words and taken your time a little bit. Okay.
The 1,000 years in recorded history have all come in the last 15 years. Last year, temperatures in some areas of the ocean reached record highs, and ice in the Arctic shrank to its small size of record, faster than most models had predicted it would. Oh, thank you. Thanks.
That was great. Feedback.
It's very engaging,
Yeah, it was.
very like presence.
Yeah, it was. Your eyes got bigger, and then some. You said your facial features were completely engaged. You said thank you to me, to the family. Was that part of it?
Yes.
It says thank you.
No, it's not good.
Right, so you interacted with her. I mean, that was interesting. That was a show that you a real presence while you were giving the speech.
This is the head with So, yeah, I got 12, but I thought that it couldn't be 12 because it's between 0 and 9.
Very good question. Yeah, I asked 0 to 9, but it's such a long time. Last time I did this exercise, spoke off, that's there, and she told me 57. Let's try and mess me up. That isn't.
Now, the single weather event is caused solely by climate change. Droughts and fires and floods, they go back to ancient times. But we also know that in a world that's warmer than it used to be. All weather events are affected by a warming planet.
Oh, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
Remember where they Good, good. All right, next.
The war is retarded. Interest arms were marched by the worst drought since the Dust Bowl, and then French by the streets break the river. Western wildfires scorched an area larger than the state of Maryland. Just last week, a heat wave in Alaska shot temperature into the 90s.
Very good. You took your time. That's good. Remember when you go in the Danielle said? No. All right, next. I thought you showed some good drama in the speech. Any other feedback? What did everybody else think? I thought you definitely put your emotions in connection with the words that you were saying. Perhaps maybe a little more volume at times would have been helpful, but otherwise, you definitely saw that you were concentrated on the speech and it meant something to you. Does anybody want to replace Nico Daniela? Yeah? Thank you very much. We'll switch out. All right, last two, here we go.
The 12 warmest years in recorded history have all come in the last 15 years. Last year, temperatures in some areas of the ocean reached record highs, and ice in the Arctic shrank to the smallest size on record. Faster than most models ever would.
Do you remember where you were?
Oh, 7, and she told me like that.
Oh, very good. That's impressive. Very impressive.
Thank you.
You have a naturally powerful voice, I think.
Half and half. I was a teacher the last 2 years, English teacher, so that's what I did all the time.
Okay. Very good enunciation. Yeah. You could have maybe looked up a couple of times, because you stared at the speech the whole time until the pen came. That's one of the reasons why there's the pen for also, is for you to look up, right? Important to look up your speech. But that was the only thing that I could have said different. Don't worry about it if you catch the pen or not, by the way. Okay, because it's very difficult to catch the pen. Usually we do this with a tennis ball. Someone want to replace Pinju? Thank you, Adrian. All right, we got 4 more people. Man, I really should have time. Good turn, Aisha.
Now we know that no single weather event is caused solely by climate change. Droughts and fires and floods, they go back to ancient times. But we also know that in a world that's warmer than it used to be, all weather events are affected by a warming planet. The fact that the sea level in New York Harbor, and now a foot higher than a century ago, that didn't cause the Hurricane Sandy, but it certainly contributed to the destruction that left parts of our mighty city dark and underwater.
Very good.
I didn't hear what she said at all. And I didn't.
All right, very clear speech as well. Any other comments? She did take her time. Maybe you could have maybe thrown in a couple of gestures here and there that might have enhanced it, but honestly, it was a very clear speech. And, yeah.
And also, she arrived, she tried to finish the only.
Yes. She did. She did.
Oh, now.
Anytime you're ready, but right now, you'll be best.
It is good to be back on campus, and it is a great privilege to speak from the steps of this historical hall that welcomed me, the president, back to Washington. I want to thank you, President. I would like to thank you guys, not me. I want to thank, now I wanted to make it be the president. Can I do it again?
You were sort of being that up for a second, you were telling me this is
No, because and then we went back to, I want to thank you.
Go ahead, let me do it again. But it was pretty good, honestly. Is anybody, I mean, you were looking up, you were doing gestures, I mean, that was pretty good. Probably should have just told you to stop, please. All right, let's go.
It was an image of Earth, beautiful, breathtaking, and glowing marvels of the oceans. And green forest and brown mountain brushes with white clouds. Excuse me. Rising over the surface of the moon. Thank you.
That was pretty good. Any feedback? Positive? Constructive criticism?
I don't know if she did intentionally, but it's times that you felt like here, you were really know that I feel like that you were.
Just avoiding it.
That made it worse.
Oh no, I remember I turned because I looked over here, so I wanted to talk to you guys.
But it wasn't good. I guess that it was.
I didn't run from you.
No. It was a good expression because if you know that maybe someone is going to happen.
Yeah, you ran away.
You did a very good job of looking at different parts of the audience.
So I don't remember the number, maybe 4. And it was here.
Interesting guess. That's
4?
all right. Let's see.
And I want to say thanks you to the players in the house for having me back. It was important for me to speak directly to your generation because the decision that we make now in the year ahead will have a profound impact on the world.
Very close to first. You said so well towards me. Keeps you right. You know where King Marco. Very good. All right, Benjamin, you're last. You saved the best for last. Wait, do you remember what the...
Yeah, 2 and
very good. Yeah, I can tell you were concentrated. Yeah.
Ang gusto ko is na is a matter fact. Lunar orbit. So Frank Borman, Jim Lovell, William Anders, the first human to orbit the moon, described what they saw, and they read scripture.
Okay, so we go.
Scripture from the book of Genesis to the rest of us vaccine. And later that night, they took a photo that would change the way we think and think about our water.
Comments? Feedback? Very good charisma.
Yeah, very good.
Yeah,
I
that's
thought you
okay.
wanted to do this.
Yeah, that would be awesome. Yeah, and that is the way. That would be very good charisma. Maybe sometimes a little bit kind of staccato in the words, as in maybe a little bit chunky, but it wasn't funny. I just thought it was something. I don't know if you're aware of it. Did anybody else hear what I just explained, or what we thought that stuff? The words were a little bit choppy. Not the words themselves, but the phrase was, because each word was kind of a little bit autonomous. And I think you can make it more fluid. But the speech, I thought, was pretty well delivered, particularly because you were smiling and you were very charismatic. Any other comments? I said I would do this. We don't have that much time. I'll do it if you guys want me to, but I'm not an expert at it. It's not like you guys want me to be true to my word and you just want to just go on an exercise. Okay, I want to thank the President DeJoy, who's here today. I want to thank him for hosting us. I want to thank the many members of the Cabinet and my administration. I want to thank Leader Nancy Pelosi and the members of Congress who are here. We're very grateful for their support. And I want to say thank you to the Hoyas in the House for having me back. It was important for me to speak directly to your generation, because the decisions that we make now and in the years ahead will have a profound impact on the world that you all inherit. All right. I didn't understand that. So I don't know. But I was tapped on the left shoulder. No. I was tapped on the hand. That's right. I was tapped on the hand. Now, that was a memory thing, because I was like, oh, yeah, good. So, very difficult exercise. Doesn't matter how often you practice it. I mean, you don't practice it very often. I'm assuming you guys have never done this. It's not going to be. It's not that much reality in terms of different things that go on during a speech. However, what is reality are things that you don't control before a speech, during a speech, that happen and that can distract you. And you do not need to control everything. You just need to focus on your speech, what you want to, and enjoy being there. Because the more you enjoy being there, the more distraction. It's just another little thing that you can use during your speech. But when I enter a competition or public speaking, or anytime I'm doing a performance, if I start to think that I need to control everything, then I'm going to probably deliver a performance that is just subpar. Because I can't, and nobody can. The surroundings are surroundings, and you have a job to do, and the job is to go and deliver a speech. Does anybody else have some final comments on this exercise? All right. We're going to have to go quickly because there's the project management that I wanted to do for a little while, and then there's the last exercise of public speaking. The debate exercise right here is more interesting, in my opinion, than the project management, but it depends on all of you, and I'll really quickly do a survey. Would you guys rather do a exercise where we do public debate and keep doing some feedback on public speaking, or would you guys like to go into some kind of technical things about launching a project setting a calendar, goal setting. We can do. I mean, I'm going to send you the PowerPoint stuff, but it's up to you now what kind of exercise you want to do together. Because we have a half hour. And I'll just do it really quickly with a show of hands. Would you guys rather do debate? It's going to be a few of you up here. There's going to be a moderator. It's going to be kind of theatrical, and we're going to choose a subject. You're going to have 2 people that are for, 2 people that are against. You debate with each other, kind of like TV style. You do that, or technical things about project management, and we exchange opinions on how to work together, how to do conflict resolution, stuff like that.
May I make a suggestion?
Of course you can.
Maybe we can try to squeeze the project management in the schedule tomorrow.
We can definitely do that, and I can also do 10 minutes of it today, but we can definitely do that.
Can finish with public speaking and try to squeeze that tomorrow?
Okay.
Does that sound okay? We could do it during lunch, for example.
I can definitely do a thing during lunch.
Or at the end of the day before going for happy hour.
Do that at the end of the big part.
Tired? Then up to you guys. Yeah.
We'll just do a vote right now. Debate exercises, more public speaking. Raise your hands. Just vote once, please. Okay. And then project management discussion. Raise your hands. Okay, so let's do some project management. All right. Now, project management is less interactive. It's this workshop. I'm interested in your stories and as much as anything that I have to talk to you guys about. Basically, off of my Climates experience, I learned a lot about coming up with an idea with other people defining, an overarching goal, a vision, and setting up the structure to carry out a project. Okay, but at any time, I'm really interested in you guys, raise your hand and say, well, I tried to launch this project, we had this problem, this is how we defined our objectives, this is how we set our calendar, etc. So really feel free. Where to begin? An overarching goal, once again, in my opinion, it's kind of just vocabulary that can be somewhat interchangeable, whether you say an overarching goal, or a vision, or a calling, in French, or vocation. When we created Climates, we had the idea that students contribute to fighting climate change. I think that the more simple you can explain your vision, your goal to anybody, the clearer it is, the more people can buy into it, and the more people who are participating can also kind of define it for themselves in an individual way. Because I always enjoyed, as president of Climates, hearing people slightly defining the goal differently, even though at some point you stay on the message. But I think it's great when people in the same project have different subtle definitions and meanings of the overarching goal of the mission of the organization, because it shows that they have completely owned the project. Has anybody launched another project on Climates and came up with a very specific vision and had either a tough time or a very easy time, and it was something that they explained very easily to other people? Has anybody done that? Has anybody ever launched? Yeah, Aisha? What kind of project was it?
So for my job, we have
Can you speak up a little bit?
Yeah. So in the current job that I work in right now in career development, we have some people that do internships within investment banks and some people who do internships outside of investment banks, and launching the internship program that's, with like Johnson & Johnson, our Fortune 500 company or corporation, and then explaining that to the potential partners. You can explain it very clearly, and I may have a say over my head, but their interpretation of the goal afterwards, or their interpretation of it, can be very different.
Yeah. And so how do you express the mission, just very simply
How do I express the mission? I express the mission as being a partnership with other Fortune 500 global corporations for underrepresented students of color to get internship experience over the summer that will matriculate into a full-time off.
Okay. Now, I understood it. I think everybody else understood it. If this is something long, but I mean, if it's complicated, then it's long. But I do think that the more you can simplify it into I think that's one way of getting people to kind of click and buy into the right way. But I mean, it was very clear. Specific objectives, I say the medium and long-term calendar setting, I see as kind of, a declension of the mission. When we formed Climate, we had students bringing solutions to the fight against climate change. And then one was collaborative research, international network, international summit. That was the first year, those were the three main goals. And each one of those had its own calendar, its own deadline, etc. But it fed into students bringing solutions. Common fundamental values, those were values, and they are values that whenever, if I paused and looked at a different activity of Primates, I would make sure that I could recognize those values in that activity. That is, whatever we did, there was collaboration, we were trying to be innovative for the values of Primates.
Credibility.
I heard credibility.
Solidarity.
Solidarity, yeah, and then there's one more. Knowledge. So they're not exactly the same in terms of what the type of work, but whenever we, in all our activity, those values needed to be there. And that's how we made sure that we were staying in our priorities and in our activity. Ambition and realism. Margot will say that I was overly ambitious, and as the vice president and my very, the intimate partner in this project, she was there to make sure that I wasn't too. Just the reality is, we both were overly ambitious and both very realistic, and we often, that was interchangeable, and everybody was like that. The more you balance those two out, I think, in the project that you're setting, the more you convey that you can do something extraordinary and you understand what the challenges and the obstacles are, the more I think you inspire people in the project. Now, a lot of this, in my opinion, is common sense, and I don't want to feel like I'm telling you guys things that you already know. So, particularly because you do a lot of our findings. But it is important, I think, to remind both yourself and other people that you're working with of these different principles and goals that kind of drive the project forward. Any comments about any of that so far? This is a logical framework. I did not, and we did not really use a logical framework precisely. We had a table with goals, with deliverables, with calendars that had the same effects, and in my opinion was a little bit more detailed and looked a little more simple than the logical framework. But the logical framework is something that a lot of NGOs use, that a lot of development agencies use to kind of make sure that their work is has priorities, that there's ways of quantifying and evaluating at different points in time the activity and making sure that the deliverables are reaching the goals that were set. Margot.
Yeah, so this morning we talked about, the fact that so many projects start and then fail because, you don't think about all the possible challenges that you might encounter, or you don't think about what's going to happen. And I think this is really important to have indicators and means of monitoring of progress. And that's really what will make your project go further. And it doesn't even have to be that ambitious. Project management is not necessarily start a think tank. It can also be be thorough in a class, for example. It's set up objectives and then continue monitoring the progress. And that's really something important, to make sure that the very little goals that you set to yourself, to your team, that you keep progress on how you achieve them.
Did anybody participate in a project where goals were fundamentally not attained, reached? The goals that were set were just not reached, and the project fell apart. You guys all had successful projects, that's good. Yeah, Kelsey?
Well, it wasn't that it all fell apart, but me and 3 other students tried to figure out what chemicals to put on our green at the school, and then publish that and show it to people and try to have them use organic, which is a very big goal for a semester.
Sorry, do Stephanie and Jack hear what you're saying? Not really. We can use the microphone, I don't mind.
Yeah.
It's just,
I'll try to talk about it.
I think we can all talk
Yeah.
about it. Yeah, go ahead.
So we were trying to figure out what chemicals they were putting on the green and what, and then try to get them to use organic or try just a patch of organic. And the green.
Talk right in the microphone, see if it works.
Okay,
it's not.
And then
It is working. It is working now. It is working.
there was one that was turning on.
Yeah.
So the green managers basically shut the door in our face every time. So we said whole sector trying to do that.
Had you anticipated that they would shut the door?
No, we thought that they were going to be more open about it just because we were asking questions. But it didn't fall apart. It actually turned into a huge question. Even though we did feature a goal of changing it, it made people more aware. So now they do signs. So our goal was to visually change things, and it didn't really work because we went in a different direction. So we had to embrace what we were given and change it.
That's, in my opinion, that's a really good adaptability demonstration. You completely change, you changed the project, not completely, you adapted it because of a challenge. I mean, it's common sense, but that shows a lot, in my opinion, a lot of resilience. And it shows your ability to evaluate at some point whether or not it's pretty easy to evaluate that things are not going right when someone shuts the door in your face. But and it's obviously a fundamental aspect to be able to recognize when you're not reaching goals, the earlier, the better, without necessarily calling into question the way you're doing it, but to be very realistic about it. Okay. Logical framework you can find anywhere. You can just type it, you can see lots of examples of it. I think it's a good tool as long as you maintain the flexibility to change things around as you go. I didn't draw out a retro planning, but retro planning is something that we use a lot in Primates. Does anybody want to explain what retro planning is? If everybody knows what retro planning is, okay, good. Does anybody want to explain it though? Instead of me? Yeah, should we get?
Yeah, because we did it.
Just speak up. Yeah.
2 weeks ago. Retro planning basically consists in.
Or the microphone, one or the other. Second, I just want everybody to. Juliette, tech.
Yeah, original planning consists in you start with the date of your event. So, and then you go backwards in time. So you're like, okay, what do I need to do the day before the event so that everything is going on right the day of the event? And then you keep following the steps. So you're going back in time all the time. And it's very, very useful because when you think about all the criteria of success of your event, then you really like anticipate all the problems, all the things that might go bad in the event, and it's really useful to plan things way in advance.
Absolutely. Does everybody understand that? The event or your goal or your the D-Day, I guess. The main, if you have an international summit, this was the international summit, you say, here it starts on August 25th, and 2 days before that, we need to have confirmed all the reservations at the hostels. 3 days before that, we need to have sent in the payment for it. 3 days before that, we need to make sure that we receive the payment from this financier. 2 days before that, we need to have sent out the invitations to the press so that they show up. And you keep going all the way back, and you get to the press. Basically, you just established a very detailed calendar, just going backwards. Doesn't mean at some point you can't switch around or forward, but one way that we did that in Primates a lot is we just had Post-its also. And we came up, everybody came up with a Post-it, and then we made sure that it was coherent, and you just place a Post-it on a big calendar. Worked out pretty well. Anybody else have retro planning in here? Creating the structure. What I mean by the yeah, of course.
How can you assure that you have all the tasks before going backwards? I mean, that we're not forgetting some tasks.
Well, Juliette, do you want to answer that? I can answer that too, but go ahead since you
I think it's the easiest way not to forget anything, actually, because, for instance, like for an event, so you will need a place, you need a budget, you need participants, you need food, you need communication. And then you take each of these aspects of your project, and then you say, okay, for participants, for instance, they need to receive the day before a reminder that the session is starting tomorrow. If you go backward, they need to be registered at least 1 month ago. And then you say you do the same for each aspect of your program. And then in the end, of course, you will forget things. Like, of course, like we don't have the absolute clue on everything that's going to happen. And there is some stuff that are going to add to your program. But I think that for me, I always do that because it's the best way to do it.
Margot?
And if I can add on to that, it's also like, it's very rare that you can manage or start a project by yourself. So that's why relying on your team and kind of figuring out who's going to be doing what in the team is really important. Like for the summit, for example, we had teams in Paris that were divided depending on the different things. So there was a schedule team, there was a participants team, there was a communication team, fundraising team, and here in New York, we divided the people across different tasks. And there's always someone who's going to be, you know, like, for example, Heidi was working on logistics mostly, and one day she was like, have you guys thought about this kind of communication tool for the summit? Oh, no, we haven't. And that's how you know, put the bricks on top of each other to create the teamwork.
I also think that I really like the retro planning. I sometimes do calendar forwards as well, depending on the detail and when I would strongly recommend it, and I think as Juliette says, the best way not to do it. But if you feel like you're better thinking from today on, then you should do it, and then maybe add some retro planning to it towards the end. I sometimes do a combination of both. When I say creating structure, I'm talking about the organization and creating a means for achieving the goals that you set. And these are very basic principles that I just try and remind myself when anytime I'm launching a project. And when we were launching a project is, first of all, you think about the human resources and the financial resources and the material resources that you're going to need to achieve these goals. And you list. And you're just listing things and making sure that you think as broadly and outside the box as possible. In any project, I don't need to emphasize the importance of teamwork, so I thought of teamwork and collaboration, obviously, in absolutely every aspect of the structure of Climates, meaning literally creative teams. Individual work and autonomy, that is, I think it's fundamental to that everybody feel empowered by the project in such a way that there are times for teamwork, there are things that require work together, and there are also things that you have your own kind of agenda, and you can achieve your goals somewhat in an individual way. You don't need to rely on somebody for absolutely every task. That's also, in my opinion, kind of a feeling that you get with working with the people in your organization. How much do certain people get to work in a team, how much does work as a more individual. But I think if every single task requires working with somebody else, then you might sometimes slow things down, and you might give everybody the feeling that they're accomplishing a personal goal in the project. Is that clear? Does that make sense what I was saying? Yeah, Margot.
Yeah, and the way I usually do it is I usually ask people what is your personal interest, what is fun for you to do, and then what are your interests in professional. Because we're talking about project management in general, you drag this training to your experience in Climates. What do you want to do in your life, and what do you think is fun? And from this, you can build experience on those tasks. Is it research? Is it to be published? Is it to manage a team? Is it to do communication, social media? And then from this, you can find the stuff you need.
And it's a very good point because Climates is a student organization and it's supposed to be, at least to a large extent, a breeding ground for young professionals and to help you individually in your job search, because let's face it, it's difficult to find employment in a lot of countries and at the international level. And so Climates should help you doing that, and it's important to come to the table with what you want to accomplish, and then how does that goal translate into a collective goal for the organization or the team that you're working in. To give examples, very concrete example, in the communication team that Margot was director of it, and then later you and Agnes, each person had a specific kind of autonomous task, whether it was press relations, whether it was going to get Climb Angels, whether it was going to get different partnerships, things that were autonomous, but it was all in the same team. So you came to each meeting and you can report, and you were able to report, well, these are the 3 Climb Angels that I was able to get in the last month. These are the 3 journalists that I contacted and I got interested in, and it didn't really depend on anybody else's work, but it was all mutually kind of reinforcing if everybody had achieved their own goals. Is any of this really too simple? Because you guys are all, in my opinion, change makers and climate leaders. I don't want to be preaching to the choir. Good. Clarity and trust. What I mean by that is every organization has some kind of distribution of tasks. Usually there's some kind of hierarchy. In Climates, I like the idea that it's as horizontal as possible, but you have some people and some kind of mechanism for making decisions and kind of evaluating the work that's done and pushing each other. And the pushing each other can be as much as the director of a team pushing a policy officer, a project officer, as the other way around. But what I thought was fundamental and what I insisted on, and I was sincere when I was doing this, is clarity. Who is in charge of what? When are you going to do it? Why are you going to do it? Why is it important? And the trust I felt came from committing to something and producing by the deadline. Not necessarily producing anything perfectly, but producing it by the deadline so that you knew that that person was going to, he was reliable and was true to the word, to his or her word. And I never, this is my style. Once again, I'm talking to you about my experience. I'm not saying that it's the best way, but I always felt that there was no need to speak in a way that reflected hierarchy, just a way that reflected clarity in terms of who was going to make what decision and who evaluated what. Does that make sense? Are there any reactions to that? I worked with a consultant who works with CEOs. And I worked with her. I had several discussions with her. She's a friend. It wasn't something that I paid. I didn't, as president of Climates, I didn't out-resource any of that stuff. But this was basically the leitmotif of her discussions with CEOs and executives. It happened to be that she worked with many business people and people in NGOs and stuff, but she told me the same thing. That clarity was the most effective way to demonstrate how you push tasks, that you make tasks distributed among different people, but that at some point they can count on somebody to make this kind of decision, but this kind of decision made by somebody else. And I think it helps so that the hierarchy does not become overbearing, nor the main characteristic of an organization structure. I think that as students and as young professionals in Climates, for example, that if we wanted to create or be in an organization with a very strong bureaucracy and having to have everything approved by another person that's technically above, I think then you should go into an organization like that and not make that Climates. Because I'll tell you, we all, at some point, if you're not already, we will be working in organizations that have a very strong hierarchy, and honestly, in my opinion, the clarity diminishes once you increase the hierarchy and the steps that you have to go through. But I think there's some reduction in a lot of cases of productivity as well. Yeah, when you increase the hierarchy and it can create also some tension, which is somewhat linked to the structure but not constraint bullet point, which states that I think that any structure should have flexibility to it. not be something that constrains creativity. Does anybody have any examples or reactions to the idea that an organization can be Santiago definitely does? External networking. I'm sorry. Very quickly. There's absolutely no harm in Santiago. Alright, let's go. Very self-explanatory slide to a large extent. Basically, external network and support. I mean, all the support and network that is not counting people in the organization. And I'm just listing the reasons why it's important when you're starting an organization or a project to not be afraid to discuss it with other people and kind of construct, whether you institutionalize it or not, construct kind of a circle of people that you can count on for either advice, people that you can show the work to. Very often, when we were launching Climates, I presented it to relatives. Very often, we had people at the Institute that develop Institute of Sustainable Development and International Relations give us advice, and we met with these experts who enjoyed seeing students and young professionals really motivated by something and trying to. So, people that are not in your organization, and because we're all similar generation here, and even though I'm a little bit older, maybe as Marco will remind me of, people in the workforce enjoy listening to innovative projects and see the exuberance and the motivation that there's. So it should never be you should not hesitate to approach people with your idea, with your project, and build a circle of people that will support you, that will give advice, and to maintain those relationships. And a network is not something that you build once and then it's just that. You need to kind of maintain it. And I feel like I always just put myself in a win-win kind of attitude when I approach anybody that I think could help. Is that I, as a student, or I, as a Climate, could bring something to this person, to this researcher, give them an opportunity to maybe give some advice and work on a project, and then give them some feedback. I feel like they're going to be more likely to give advice as well. Same thing with our potential financial partners. Once you build your network, you also open up opportunities to do recruitment, and that can bolster your human resources. Any reactions to that? Yeah, actually, yeah.
Yeah, because I talked to a friend recently because I asked her about similar situations that we were experiencing now in Climate. She had experienced before. And when I was talking to her, I was like, and she was explaining how they were like solving this and this and this problem, and now they were like managing their own association. And it's like, why didn't have done this before? I mean, and you should always, like, it's so useful to ask about how other organizations are managing their own problems, how they failed, and how they succeeded in solving the problems. Yes, it's very experience, and I really sit myself each time I'm going to have to face the same situation. I will definitely ask my network around me.
I always thought that if you learn from your own mistakes, that's great. If you learn from others by talking to these people who have committed their own mistakes, if you learn from others' mistakes, then you're even more ahead. So that's what I try to do. All right. Once again, simple slide where it's three. Well, I'm going to send you these slides, obviously, so you can take pictures, but I'll send it to you too. Detailed calendar setting, regular meetings and communication, where you emphasize the simplicity, clarity. When I say coordination between different projects and teams, that's self-explanatory. The importance of location. Today we're in a setting that is comfortable, that is demonstrates a partnership. The logo is the Center for Social Innovations on the summit, so it's a win-win situation. demonstrates the creativity and innovation that is at the core of Climates, because we're at the center of social innovation, etc. Facilitation and collective intelligence techniques. I've talked about using post-its, poster boards. The more visual you can be, I think, the better, in my opinion. However, you know, always stay sustainable and not use an excessive material when you need it. Yeah, Aisha.
I have a question about project management. Where is it that you kind of put in training, like, for your team, and like career development things in there, so that it's not so structured, so that, you know, people don't find themselves pigeonholed into a certain role, and so they can grow within that, being moved into things that are, you know, maybe that's where promotion work.
I'll answer that question, and then we'll stop, unfortunately, but, and I'll be here tomorrow to talk more. I think that training is ongoing, and then you should also kind of institutionalize, set aside specific times to do that training. One of those times would be when you are just before the election of new people in the same positions. And the people that have those positions, I think, need to set aside the time we call it SSU. It would be the transition period. I think that's the training time. I think if you use deliverables for the training time, that's also important. So you have something in writing, you do vocal training. And I also think that you can institutionalize it by, we created a finance advisory committee where we have alumni in it. And 4 times a year, each trimester, we meet and we go over the organization's goals and activity. And so it's pretty ongoing. And I think that for a student organization, the main obstacle is how do you not start from scratch, but also give the students the opportunity to create their own projects and own it, and then learn from what was learned before, so that you overcome the fact that you're only committed to a certain extent for 1 or 2 years as a student. If you want the organization to keep growing and do better and better things, you cannot start from scratch every time, because you're going to relearn things that they're not necessarily that exciting, like how to make a calendar or something. I mean, things that can be pretty basic. So I think it's ongoing with institutionalized aspects in specific periods in deliverables. Alright, these things we'll talk about together more another time. Alright. I'll send the slides. There's a quote that I talked about by Dale Carnegie, and I'll see.
So now I know you guys are tired, so we're going to talk a little bit. So some of you guys, the ones who are going to stay for the BQ presentation, it's going to be in the other room. Those of you who are coming with me to the UN, we're going to walk a little bit, take the subway, walk a little bit, so we have time to kind of wake up. We are on a tight schedule, so if you can, if you need to go to the bathroom, go very quickly. I will ask you, if possible, to everyone take your chair and put it on those cables. And for the live streamers, the live stream will be over for now, and it will take on around 6:30 for what you learned today, followed by the poster exhibition.